Hi guys, it's Jake here at Canadian Cutting Edge, and today I want to talk about stropping. The thing that you do with a piece of leather to help keep your edge pristine. So if you're interested at all in that, stick around and we'll do a talk about stropping. Let's talk about stropping. If you have knives, even if you've only got a few kitchen knives, it's a good idea to invest just a little bit of money on some leather so that you can, and some compound. This is just a green compound, so that you can help maintain your blades. If you're always using a sharpening system where you're actually taking steel off of your knife with a stone or some other, fairly aggressive method of sharpening your knife, you're going to end up going through your steel in a hurry. You don't need to actually use those aggressive steel removal systems very often if you maintain your knives in a sharp condition. One of the ways to do that is using leather. You can use leather with or without a compound. The compound that I recommend that people buy the green compound. Green compound is a compound that's designed for steel. It's also designed for stainless steels. Those two types of steels work with different kinds of compounds. Regular steel, like carbon steel, you really want to be picky what kind of compound you use. You can use blue for just about everything. That's an all-purpose compound. Green works for any kind of knife steel, either the carbon steel or the stainless steels. And stainless will also go fine with just about any of the other colors as well, except for don't use the red polishing rouge. From the research that I've done, red rouge is not for like knife steels. It's for your precious metals and stuff like that. Will it do a job if you use it? Yeah, it'll do something. It'll probably help you and everything, but it's just not the best choice. So you've got blue, all-purpose. Green works great for any kind of knife. Carbon steel or stainless steel. And black is also good for carbon steel and stainless steel. All the other colors can work with stainless steel. And you can read it on the label. If you go to the store and you see a chart, it'll be on the box. Like if you've got a box that's got like 5 different colors on it, take the box off the shelf, turn it over, and on the back of it, it's probably going to say what color is fine, coarse, medium coarse, really super coarse, or whatever. If you are going to strop between colors, always start from the most coarse going to more fine. I find, keep it simple, guys. Just buy the green stuff, and you don't need all the other colors. I just use green. Green works. It's functional, does the job, and it works for all of my knives and all the knives that you're ever going to own. Another option, instead of going to find a piece of leather from a leather store or somebody who sells them, is go to a thrift shop and look through the belt section, men's belts, and find a leather belt that has as little, or hopefully you can find one that has no texturing on it at all. So just a flat leather belt where the face, both sides of the belt are just as plain leather as possible. So you can tell just by looking at this thing, this is only about 1.5 inches wide, and most men's belts are about the same. So that's another cheap way to get some leather to do this. If you do want to spend some money and get strops, there's a number of different ways you can buy them. You can buy paddles that are roughly this size, a little bit bigger, usually a little wider, often have a handle on the end. Sometimes they'll have a piece of leather glued to two sides. You do take away steel when you strop with a compound, but you take away very, very little. So it is a great way to maintain your knives. So let's start off with, what do you need? Well, you can go to a store and buy something like this, where it's sort of like a barber's strop. I use this strop only occasionally. This is a very, very inexpensive one. I bought this one quite a while ago. I don't use it that often. Or you can do what I did here. I went to a local leather worker and I just asked if I could have some of his scraps. And he had a scrap piece that was roughly this wide and fairly long. This was actually all from one piece. And he just gave it to me because he's also a friend of mine. He was my next door neighbor. So it might cost you a couple bucks. And what I did was I took a piece of wood. This is just fiberboard. Any wood you have is a good idea. And I glued it suede side facing up on one piece of wood and skin side facing up on the other piece of wood, because there's reasons to do both ways. And once you've got that done, you go to the store and you buy a compound. You can buy your compound in a hard brick like this, or you can buy it in a paste, like a toothpaste tube kind of thing. I just buy some really cheap stropping compound from my local. It's in Canada. We've got Princess Auto. It's the equivalent of America's Harbor Freight, and I just buy some of their compound. So I got a piece of paper here. Let's see how well it cuts. Yeah, not that great. Okay, cut for a little while there, but as you can see, it's not a really good cutting edge right now. If I do the nail nick test, where you take your cutting edge and you put it on a nail on your fingernail, it catches fairly good in some spots. If you feel it with your finger, it feels fairly sharp. So if you just do your fingertip kind of test, you might think, hey, this knife's fine. But if you do the paper cutting, it might show that it's not that great. This knife is in too good of shape to need steel removal with, like a Lansky or my Work Sharp or whatever. Instead, I can just strop to get this edge to be cutting really, really good. So I use green or less coarse. And all you do is you charge up your brick of your leather strop, I should say. You just rub the compound onto the leather. You don't have to do this every time you strop, unless you strop for like half an hour at a time. You just sort of will learn over time how much compound you have to put on. If you change the shade of color that you have, that your leather is, then you've probably got enough compound on there to help out. It really doesn't take an awful lot. On the outside of the skin leather facing up, it's much more easy to see that you've got compound on your strop. Because over time, as you sharpen your knife, your strop, especially the one with the skin side up, will start to turn black. And that's because of the steel actually coming off the knife leaves tiny little particles on the leather, and so you can start to see that color. You don't want to put a thick cake coating of compound onto the leather strop. If it's just compound on there, it's too much, and you don't really get as much finesse or control. So you just want a thin layer on there, and then you can just sort of wipe it off. You don't need excess. You don't want any bumps of it and stuff. And if you accidentally nick your leather, here's a nick that I did right there, and one right there, and there's a bad one right there. You can see, once you've got a few of those, you just have to replace your strop. And that's just because I made a mistake and I put the cutting edge the wrong way. I was too deep on my angle with my steel, and I cut into the leather. That's one reason why I like using cheap leather from somebody who's a leather worker. The guy's a saddle maker, and he does other things as well. Sometimes you might be able to find a taxidermist that has leather, or a craft store you can buy leather. Just look around on the internet, leather, put the name of your closest city, and you might find a place to get some. So now we got to the point, 8 minutes in finally, how do I strop the actual knife? Well, I like to start with the suede compound first, and the cutting edge is this side. And I tend to like to pull towards myself better than pushing away from myself. But what you're doing is the spine goes first, and you're sliding the cutting edge across the steel. You try to find the angle that your bevel edge, your final edge, and get close to it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And if I got this, maybe this angle will help. That's roughly the 20 degrees that it is. And so I slide it across, trying to maintain close to that 20 degrees. The benefit of leather is you don't have to be perfect on the angle, because the leather is a little bit soft and it will, wrap itself around the finished edge of your blade, and it'll sort of conform to it, and it will sharpen your steel. So I usually do like 10 or 15 slides. I often start with a tip and I move my way up so that I'm not just going across the bevel like this, but I'm actually going along the bevel, sort of. So it's sliding along the cutting edge a bit, sort of in the opposite of a cutting motion. Like I would, if I wanted to cut, if this was a fish and I wanted to cut the scales or the skin off, I might cut in that type of motion. I want to do the exact opposite. So starting with the tip and then sliding along that edge. And you do that 10 or 15 times, and then the other side going exact opposite way. And you'll get comfortable with how it feels by simply doing it more. You can actually make your blade duller by stropping. It's not guaranteed to sharpen your knife. So the technique that is involved is important. Like, you can't just stick your blade on a piece of leather and say, hey, it's going to be perfect, no problem. There is a skill to this, and it does take time to perfect the skill. And the only way to get there is by trying. Another common mistake that newbie stroppers make is they bear down really hard and they push like crazy on the strop. Just, bearing down really, really hard. That's actually counterproductive. You're going to end up making your blade duller instead of sharper. You just have the weight of the knife basically and a little bit extra to give you a little bit of control, and you slide it across. And you try to do an equal number of times on either side. And after I've done about the 15, then I usually do about 10. And after 10, I usually do about 5 in each direction. And then 3, and 3, and 2, and 1. Notice that this strop is now a slightly different color than it was before. It's more gray. And let's just see, wipe the dust off gently, carefully, so you don't cut your finger. Let's see if it cuts any better. Not a lot. It's better, but not a lot better. And it could be because while I was demonstrating it, I did, some of the things that you shouldn't do. I was bearing down really hard. So if it just doesn't want to come, you just do it more lightly and just keep going. And then you move on to, this is my second course, is the skin upside. This is the finishing strop. Very important here not to press too hard. You're just sliding it across this bevel. You can feel the edge just when you hold it. You can feel when you get to the right point, and just slide it across and get the whole knife stropped. And, so I don't bore you, I've cut out some of the time that I spent stropping. Just you and the knife, and you're stropping, and you're enjoying your time with your knife. I'm sort of ambidextrous, so I have a big advantage because I've got arthritis happening in my hands and in my wrist. So when one arm gets a little bit sore, I just switch to the other one. And now I'm going the opposite. Notice I was going sliding this way before. So the point of contact was here and I was sliding along that way. Also come the other way with the point of contact here and sliding it along that way. So starting with the point of contact, at the base of the blade and coming to the tip. Whoop, sorry about the noise. And then back the other way, tip to the heel. So then after stropping, sort of clean the dust off a bit and test and see what you got. But all in all, that little bit of stropping gave a better edge. Doesn't take an awful long time. And you can make your knife last longer. If that doesn't answer all your questions, put some questions in the comment section below and let me know what you want to know about stropping. By the way, those of you who are curious, this is the 7028 LUE-XL by Sanrenmu. I've got a review on this knife. It's a locking liner lock, one of those thumb opening knives. I'm not really that good at opening the knives that way, but you can see that I can actually do it. But it's a little sort of gentleman's folder by Sanrenmu. So thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing and sharing. And remember, always cut towards your chum and not your thumb.